Welcome to Access Your Mastermind. I'm your host, Julie Oldberry. Today's guest, Karem Zafra-Vera, is someone who lives and breathes the power of the mind, but not just in theory. Karem is a mindset coach, author, podcast host, a former Proctor Gallagher Institute consultant, and founding certified global coach with the Napoleon Hill Institute. She's also the founder of Mindful with Karem, a platform transforming lives through the timeless principles of mindset mastery with a deeply personal and soulful twist. I've been so looking forward to the opportunity to speak with Karem. Let's tune in now. Hello and welcome to Access Your Mastermind. And today we're here with Karen Zafra-Vera. And Karem, you were a professional mediator for 18 years prior to becoming a mindset coach. And now you are the CEO with Next Level Consulting, and you do that through Mindful with Karem.
Okay.
And you're a former consultant through Proctor and Gallagher Institute, learned under Bob Proctor, and also a founding and certified global coach at the Napoleon Hill Institute, which is where you and I had the opportunity to meet. And I'm
Excellent.
so happy that you're joining us today.
Thank you. Thank you, Julie. Thank you for having me here with you. Truly a pleasure to be here. Yeah, I started out as a mediator. My career after college was in mediations. Previously, before that, I've always been an entrepreneur in some way, shape, or form. Not necessarily what I had desired. Um, but somehow life led me in that path. And so being a mediator for 18 years, um, it took me that to realize that I was actually coaching even then, you know.
Right.
I was actually coaching, helping parties come together to have some level of a settlement, bringing them, empowering them to come together. So it was pretty cool, but I knew that there was something coming. There was something more, and I wasn't sure what that was.
Hmm.
So yeah, it's been a beautiful journey. Um, I love the journey of personal development. My personal development journey started way before I became a coach, and I was able to implement it into my family and my children's. I think if I did anything right, it was the fact of instilling in them that's something that they are already. Their personal development is their core. You
Yeah,
know.
that's so important, I think. And I often talk about that when people come on our show and they say how they're using this material with their children or instilling it with them. And I'm
Mhm.
always like, oh, could I get a redo on that? Because I didn't quite have it at that point. I mean, there were certain things that I could do, but like looking now where I am today and looking back on that, I don't want to call it a regret because everything happens as it's supposed to and designed. And I know my daughter will be just fine, but I just think like, what advantage could I have provided her had I been instilling this in her from
Oh my
day
gosh.
one?
I think that is the natural thought of any parent. But I would say to focus and simmer on the impact that you can still have on them, right?
That is
E-
true.
Every day is an opportunity. Every conversation is an opportunity. Every interaction is an opportunity. So we can drive ourselves crazy because I know the feeling. There's so many things that I'm like, if I could or should, I wished I could have, and everything, but we're here. And the one beautiful thing that this journey has taken me is um to live in the present,
Mhm.
to be grateful because without those experiences, I wouldn't be where I'm at now. And now I live intentionally and I get to experience the journey. I get to emotionalize the experiences, better said, you know.
Yeah, that's fascinating. Tell me, Karen, so your journey, you're like from mediation, and I remember days in mediation. I was heavily involved in risk management and human resources for a city, so inevitably we
You've
were
had
always
plenty.
getting
Mhm.
lawsuits for something. And but we've engaged in mediation, quite frequently. So I just, and I do recognize what you're saying about that. You feel like you're coaching in that session, and there are, I can see how a lot of this material could actually be used to move that
Absolutely.
process forward. But what was it that was sort of the pivotal moment for you that made you decide, like, okay, I'm just going to close my mediation practice?
Yeah.
And, and you were very successful too. It's not like you were just,
Mhm.
like,
Julie, first of all, I knew that I loved what I did and I was passionate, but then I also recognized that I wasn't as passionate as I used to be. And at the same time, dealing with this emotion, I knew that there was something else. But the thinking at that time was always like, well, what else can I do that I would be passionate about? And I looked at, okay, what other careers can I? And it was all so surface thinking.
Mhm.
It was really so surface thinking that coaching never even crossed my mind. But I was coaching because when I was in the mediations, in my practice, even the paralegals, I was coaching them, and I would be like, start this every morning, and start journaling here, and start doing this, and so forth. And so it was interesting because I was elevating them already. I just never had the image of me being a coach. So long story short, as I continued, the key point here was my father's transition.
Mm.
My father became ill. It was a huge impact on me because I thought he was the healthiest individual. I mean, he just never got sick. He was never in a hospital. Just it was just far from understanding that he was diagnosed with esophageal cancer.
Mm.
And so at that time, I think I was at the first stages, I was in denial. I was working and I was really busy and so forth and so forth. And then it came towards I think it came towards the end of the journey, the last maybe 8 months of his journey, where I was really battling in the sense of I wanted to spend more time with him, but then I had a business. I wanted to, I mean, I did everything with him. I took him to his doctor's appointments and so forth, but I wanted more time, and I believe he asked of me being there more.
Mm.
And so I was like, what do I do? Because I have the practice, I have the business. And
Yeah.
it was really a crazy experience because when I would speak to my husband about it, he's like, well, go. Like, I go, yeah, but I got mediations coming and I have to like do this and so forth. And in a week's time, everything came to a halt. All emails, phone calls. I mean, I had what was on my calendar for the next like 3 months, but Monday came around, there was no communication, it was fine, no big deal. Tuesday, Wednesday, and I started to get like, what's going on? What's the silence that's happening? And so in that process, I even went into GoDaddy and I checked that all my emails were working. I called some of my, more frequent paralegals. Have you called me? Like, have you tried booking a mediation? Like, it was just so strange within a couple of days. And it came to a halt completely. And I was like, and I remember sitting at my desk. And at that time, my husband and I shared an office. And I remember looking across the desk and I was like, I don't understand what's happening, you know? And then he was like, what? And I was like, and I told him, and he's like, well, I guess somebody above made the decision for you. Because I had this guiltiness, like, how do I let go of something that is producing money? Like most people would be
Yeah.
so grateful to have money coming in.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you just turn it off and let go or put it to the side, like how, I didn't know how to manage that. I didn't know how to feel about that. And when he said that to me, it was like, boom, it landed in my heart. And I was like, oh my goodness. And I was like, and that was the moment that I had an answer. And so things continued to slow down. Um, as far as like no more like I wasn't getting emails, but I did have mediation scheduled, so I had to deal with that. And I just poured myself into my father and just being with him.
Mm-hmm.
And through the process and towards his end of his transition, um, I remembered, and I had such amazing, deep conversations with him when I would take him to his doctor's appointments and so forth, that when I ended up when he ended up passing at that moment, I came back home, I remember, and I was just like, life is too precious. Like I'm not as excited with my mediation practice as I used
Mm-hmm.
to be. I'm not passionate about it anymore. It becomes a point where you're listening to a divorce process, and it's like you're not even feeling sorry or any emotional connection towards the parties that are going through a divorce. And I was like, I don't want to be that individual. And so I decided, I said, well, if this is the case, the scenario, and I was guided through here, I said, I'm closing this chapter of my chapter with my father, with my business too. And so I really, really dived into personal development deeper than I had ever studied it. But there was a focus, there was an objective, and my objective was to find. I remember being so stubborn and saying, like, I refuse to do anything that it is not in alignment and is my purpose. I know that there's a purpose, and I need to know what that is. And it took me a good 4 months of just deep studying, and this was without mentors. This was just like me going deeper and listening to different people on YouTube and so forth. And from one moment to another, um, at that time, my brother and I, we shared videos to support each other through our pain. And every time that I would open YouTube, Bob Proctor would come out. And for whatever reason, before then, whatever reason, I was not ready for him. And so I would always just like, no, not him. Let me go to another one.
Mm-hmm.
And so at that time, I was listening to a lot of, you know, um, Anthony Robbins and all of this corporate, because I was in the corporate side, right? And one day, my brother sent me a video of Bob Proctor. And in this video of Bob Proctor, I was like, oh, and he's like, you don't like him? And I'm like, I don't know. There's something that it doesn't click with me. And I said, but I'll listen to it because I was honoring the fact that he sent it to me.
Mm-hmm.
And that was my turnaround.
Wow.
When I heard that video, I was like, oh my God, who is this man? Right? Like, I want to know more. I want to hear more. And I dived into his website. I dived into like, okay, what can I start out with? And that's how it evolved. And me purchasing the first smallest package, I remember it was just the smallest package, and I was like, let me just see. Led me to having a replay of his paradigm shift, which is one of his, it was like a conference he would do maybe twice a year. And I loved it. I fell in love with it. And at that moment, once I actually listened to it, because I procrastinated to the last moment where it was going to be deleted from me. I listened to it and it was like an answer completely there. And I was
Mhm.
like, oh my goodness, I want to be a coach. If I get to study this daily, I get to breathe it, eat it, smell it, see it, and then I get to share this with others. Like, what an amazing gift. And that was the moment that I decided that I was going to be a coach. And so my journey began there. So I'm so grateful to my father because you know, you have to go through certain experiences to go back and say, oh my God, he was guiding me the entire time
Yeah.
because he was into personal development. I just wasn't aware of what he was showing me or, you know, feeding me. I wasn't
Mhm.
aware at that time, but now I can look back and say, oh my gosh, he said this to me and he said this to me and this, and that. And the entire time he was involved in it, you know? So that was my closing chapter and beginning chapter to the life that I'm so grateful to live now.
Mhm. Wow. I know my father had transitioned from brain cancer when I was 18. I was a few weeks into college, and I know that that kind of changed my world in, quite a few ways. I don't say I think that I was looking quite for my purpose at that time, but it did shift how I felt, I think, about religion and things like that. I start to question, like, wait, this man went to church every day and, now he's got cancer and got to, you know what I mean? You have like these kinds of things that I just see very differently now with age, experience, perspective, awareness, all of that. It's completely different in that regard. But I also wanted to touch on when you were talking about Bob Proctor, how you used to kind of just like go by him, like you'd listen to it, didn't really resonate with you, and then you picked it up later, and all of a sudden you're like, who is this guy? And give
Right.
me more, give me more. What do you think the reason is behind that? Like how, I'm assuming the videos didn't change over time
No,
that you
the
were
videos
watching.
didn't change. It was the person's decision, right? And it goes back to when the student is ready, the teacher shows up. It's so easy to say, and so many people like we don't believe it necessarily, but it is. And so it's how many times have you experienced such a great thing and you want that for that person, and they talk and you talk to that person, and that person doesn't take any action because they're not ready. They haven't made a decision. I was determined. I was so determined that I was only going to work in my purpose. And so through that, you know, you ask and you shall receive.
Mhm.
And there is a, you know, it takes its time for you to be ready for it, right? You got to pay the price, and paying the price is not, you know, most people would say paying the price is working harder and making sure you deserve it. No, paying the price is sitting on that decision and doing what you can do with what you have at the very moment and knowing that you are going to get a solution, you know, and that is, I believe that that's why I attracted and found my answer. And it was so solid.
Yeah.
Julie, it was honestly, I think there's been twice in my life that I have been solid in my decision. And this was that one. There was nothing. And that solidness has helped me through the ups and downs of the business because I never question um if I'm in the right path, if I'm in the right field.
Right.
It's more of the question of where do I need to pivot? What do I need to do? And so forth, but never doubted that this is where I'm supposed to be.
Yeah, for sure. So when you're with Bob Proctor, you're studying under, PGI, and then you move over to Napoleon Hill Institute. Can you talk a little bit about that and just maybe how Think and Grow Rich kind of showed up for you in your life? That's a book, obviously, for people that don't know. I'm sure they all do that if they're watching Access Your Mastermind. But, that's Napoleon Hill's book. So at the Institute, that's, kind of like, let's call it the main text that we read and study. But when did that kind of show up in your life, that book?
Um, so Think and Grow Rich showed up for me immediately because Bob Proctor read it every day for 60 some years. So it was part of my foundation, completely part of it. Um, Bob Proctor also um, connected me to other mentors, other authors that I love to read, Neville Goddard,
Mhm.
Thomas Short, James Allen's, and so forth, right? So, but when I stepped into Napoleon Hill, it was through word of mouth, right? It was
Mhm.
through people that I knew that were involved, and so I was like, okay, and it was a perfect timing. I think it was because obviously Bob Proctor had already passed,
Mm.
and I was looking for a community. I was looking because I had all this time I had really worked on by myself in my
Mhm.
business. And so super selective with the people I bring into my circle. And so as selective as I have always been, I was looking into, okay, I want to be part of a bigger group. I was looking for an intellectual side, but also a spiritual side, because that's where I've really expanded more. The integration of both has been my beautiful unfoldings of the way that I coach. And so when Napoleon Hill came into the picture, I was like, okay, I definitely want to come in. I definitely want to embrace. There was a lot of people that I knew of that were joining too. And so it was a big deal in the personal development field, arena. And so that's how I stepped into it. And it has definitely been a roller coaster. I think it has been a stage in my life, a chapter of my life where there was um, a lot of healing,
Mhm.
releasing, and then reprogramming, rebuilding my image, my worth, my identity, and it has been a beautiful journey. And it does bring that fulfillment in my heart of I am with the right people, and it has continued. And then that led me to being part of the Spanish division, which has been a beautiful gift that I stepped into, and it has expanded me and my community. It has brought me closer to my roots, where I didn't know that I was missing necessarily. But then I started to connect with more of the Latin community and so forth, and that just brought another level of richness into my heart. So it's been a really beautiful journey, um, being part of it, and as I still am, but more focused now on my own personal business.
Mhm. So you were talking about your inner circle and that you're kind of selective or very selective about who you let into that. And Napoleon Hill talks about that as like maybe mastermind groups.
Right.
So
Mm.
how has your own inner circle influenced your success? Um, and has it ever failed you?
Oh, yeah. Well, no. You know what? Let me rephrase that. It has never failed me because every experience is a lesson right there. Okay. Has it been disappointing? Yes. Right. Because we live out of expectations that we
Hmm.
don't recognize. And so has it been disappointed? It has been disappointing. But the people that have come in and left my life has left me beautiful lessons, and it has left me with more clarity of who I am, where I stand, and even my self-worth in the process of it, you know?
Yeah.
So my inner circle is It is very, very selective. It's interesting because I just came back from a retreat and this past weekend, and I recognize how selective I am. And I recognized how um it was just so interesting, Julie, because I recognize how selective I am in a conversation, where I'm going to put my attention, where I'm going to stand in with my energy. And it's not because others are less or they're not the right people. It's just where I just choose to be proud to be able to choose that I can select where I want to be and participate in, you know?
Why do you think that's so important for you and for other people?
I believe it's incredibly important because it's a way of honoring yourself and not being a people pleaser. How many times, I mean, just in general, Julie, right? Like, how many times do we get into a conversation that we don't necessarily are interested, but we're there because we're pleasing somebody else and so forth? And so, what that has taught me is that I put myself first. I put my energy first. Um, I respect myself and my intuition because your intuition is always guiding you. So when I feel that I'm not connected, it's okay. I don't need to be connected to everything and I don't need to be connected to everyone. I can participate. And so I realized that even in this seminar that I was in, I chose when I was going to speak. I chose when I was going to participate. I did have that human experience, the human mind that says, you're being snobbish, or you're too shy. And it's like, and how easy it is for us to be influenced by that voice, right? Which is our ego and the influence of outsiders, but not necessarily when I recheck myself, I'm like, no, I'm not being shy. This is not shyness. This is just my inner core doesn't want this, doesn't want to be here, doesn't want to participate in particular conversations, you know? And so I honored that in me. And and it feels good to honor myself. It feels good that I don't have to bend my integrity with myself and that I don't have to bend, try to please somebody else and that I'm being also respected for it.
That's really fascinating. I know when I kind of started my really deep diving into the self-development and this material and everything, like that's hard to protect your energy and to go from being a people pleaser. Like that's all I was. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? I don't really have a good sense of, I mean, I had a sense of who I was and where I wanted to go in life and things like that, but my frame of reference for how I valued myself was always external, as how other people reacted to me or whatnot. So that whole thing was a huge shift for me in general, just re-seeing myself. And then I got into this whole thing of feeling like I was incredibly selfish, right?
Mhm.
Like that I only participate in things that I want to do. Like I'm not doing anything I don't want to do anymore. You know what I mean? There's no such thing as I'm obligated to anything. I mean, obviously there are certain things like with my daughter or family or you know what I mean, things that but I don't see those as obligations. I see those as things that I want to do, but kind of distinguishing between that. But um yeah, but I kind of had the a weight of that feeling like, oh, like I'm too focused on myself now. Like this isn't how, good people are. Like I'm not a nice person anymore because I, you know, won't bend over backwards, do 15 flips and,
Yeah.
somersault sideways for you. But like that, I think that can be harder than it seems like, like I think some people can take it and say, you know what, I'm making a decision. This is who I am. and they do that kind of like quantum leap into that. They're just like, and they're merged with that person, right? And then there are some people like me who are like, yeah, I've made this decision, but I feel like this tether of like always like this boomerang or something like always, bringing me
Mhm.
back or whatnot. And that was hard to just be comfortable in myself, like that this whole package is working, right? Like, no, I'm not selfish. I'm managing my energy. No, when I do this, this is actually making me appear in the world as a better version of me, and therefore I'm able to help other
Mhm.
people. But
Yeah.
I'm always kind of impressed with people who are like, I made this decision and I like, just did this and I see myself like this and boom, and they're there. And I know that happens because I've seen it happen with others. But
It's a cultivation. It's Julie, it's not a decision that you make and all of a sudden you are that person. It's the auto suggestion. It is the internal dialogue that you're constantly having, is recognizing the emotion that you're feeling when you are doing something that is not in alignment with yourself. And just like when you made a decision to not be a people pleaser, right? Then the same way is the same decision that we all need to make continuously. It's not a one-time decision. It is, you're always resetting because every day, just like we shower, we have to cleanse ourselves, filter out the influence from outside, from our families, from the culture, from our heritages. It's all there. So um it's the constant decision that you make of what your foundation is, what you want, honoring what you want. And so it begins when you're so consistent with it and when you're acknowledging, when you're being intentional and you're being conscious of things, then you realize, oh, this is becoming easier and easier. And it unfolds into its own life. And yes, there has to be a balance. There has to be a balance. And it's, again, I'm working on that.
I love that you said it's just not one decision. I think I find that very reassuring because as I was going through this, and I continue to go through, but it's like thought by thought. It's not, that's the
Well,
work.
it is. It's the work. It's like, Napoleon Hill talks about the definitive purpose, right?
Yes.
But you have to convince, you have to work, you have to cultivate, you have to visualize, you have to auto-suggest it in order for that to become something fundamental in you, right? And I
Yeah.
think that, yes, we make a decision, but because we face, and so, Bob Proctor talks about two types of decisions, a convenient decision
Hmm.
and a decision you're anchored with. The decision that you're anchored with is the one that you reset yourself. There's no question or doubt about it. It is just the auto suggestion that you're reminding yourself that this is a decision you took. And you're tapping in again into the influence, into the essence, into the frequency, the vibration, so that you stay consistent with that decision. A convenient decision is one that you do whenever you want and you don't put a priority or you don't see it as important. You think, "Oh, I'll start tomorrow," or "I'll do, I'll be good today," and tomorrow comes and then you're like, "I can miss a day." That's a convenient decision.
Hmm.
So I do believe that every day we need to wake up and we need to reset ourselves as a new day, reminding yourself, of your purpose, of who you want to be, dictate and claim the day that you want to have, um, and who you're showing up as in this world.
I also wanted to touch on because you mentioned your involvement with the Spanish division at
Mhm.
Napoleon Hill Institute, and I was curious, Is there anything like all cultures are unique, obviously, in their own ways and stuff, but is there anything unique about the Latin culture when it comes to mindset in general, or like studying mindset or the approach to this material? Do you see any
Yes.
cultural differences, or are you
Yeah.
able to share any of that with us?
Yeah, first of all, I think the Latin division or the Latin culture is so rich in emotion. Um, I can listen to Outwitting the Devil in English, and if reading it in Spanish or listening to Spanish, it's a whole different level. It is
Really?
so much more impactful. It's like so there's I feel we bring an essence of richness and depth into words, emotions, actions, um, our expressions. There's just so much depth into it. And that is a representation of what the Latin culture is. But I also know that because of the culture, there's a lot of scarcity mindset. And it's not scarcity because of money, it's scarcity because of the lack of value. Because as a culture, we always put everybody else first
Mm.
before we place ourselves first. And that alone right there is like the number one fundamental limiting thought that we have. How am I going to spend money on myself when I have my siblings, my parents, my kids, to take care of? And so I feel that it's more of a struggle
Hmm.
to recognize our worth. It's more of a struggle to um, be independent of the decisions that you make, because there's a lot of black flash
Hmm.
of, you know, why are you not thinking about us? Why are you being selfish? And, it's just like it's not part of the culture. And so not only are you working on the limiting thoughts and working on your self-worth and creating an image, but then you alienate yourself from the family because what people don't understand, they're like, Karen's doing something. This person is doing something else. Like, I don't know what they're on, but it's like, what do they do? There's a criticism because there's no understanding of it,
Hmm.
right? Because that is not the way that we were raised to do. It's always about family. It's always about, always being connected and united, which is a beautiful thing. It's a beautiful, beautiful
Yes, it
thing.
is.
There is so much warmth and heart and significance to it. But there is a silver lining that we need to step into and be upfront and bold about so that we can actually step into our truth and be okay with that, you know.
I mean, I think as coaches and stuff, we consider, people's individuals limiting beliefs too. But this kind of brings in just another layer when you think about it. And this is not unique to the Latin culture by any means, but any culture can have
Hmm.
its own set of limiting beliefs, or just by nature of that being a culture or a tradition. This is just how we think, is this a segment of society or whatnot.
Right.
So you're kind of doing that too, because once you, like you said, this material and everything has brought you, or the Spanish division and stuff has helped you to get back to your roots and to,
Yeah,
like
absolutely.
feel that. But you know, there's also, I think, maybe a little bit of a scariness when you're pulling away from that too, when you see yourself,
Hmm.
taking a step out that most people aren't. And it's not like people are going to necessarily welcome you with the openest of arms when they don't understand what you're doing or whatnot. So I just think that's it didn't really occur to me until this, like how many layers there are of belief that people carry with them. I mean, I've heard of like ancestral belief and stuff,
Mhm.
tracing through. But this is kind of like that, you know.
Absolutely.
I,
It
I
is. It
think it's
is absolutely. Um, it is. It's just that it's every, like you said, every culture has their own paradigms. Um, and I get to identify with the culture that I was raised in,
yeah.
and so then I get to see, and I've had to also heal those limiting beliefs. And then it's where I say we bring on traditions, but we don't even ask if we're happy with those traditions.
Hmm.
We don't even ask how do they help or support the life that I want. We just bring them on because they're automatic in our lives. And in the Latin or in any culture, we have to learn to ask, what is it that you want? What is it that I want? What is it that I want to feel? Because now you question the tradition, and
Yeah,
then you get to intentionally decide what you're going to bring into your experience instead of being an autopilot process.
right. Yeah, very, very good point there. I know we're coming up on a little bit of time with you, and I want to make sure we can dive into some of the programs that you offer personally through your company and how they cater to different individual needs.
um, yeah, absolutely, thank you for asking. So I love to do one-on-one coaching. I think personal coaching is one of my favorites, because it's more customized,
Hmm.
right? And but I always work with each individual. I do group coaching, and corporate coaching. So in the process of what I do, it's about, I believe that, and it's so funny because everything that I've done has had the word ignite, but it's activating our internal powers so that we can actually live the life that we desire, that we are consciously co-creating. And so, whether you're an entrepreneur, a mom at home, or launching a new business, or even transitioning, because that's what I did, right? Transitioning from one business to another. When you when you create the belt of tools that will help you throughout the rest of your life in the decisions that you make and the things that you are attracting into your life. When you seek the different perspective, when we're using our faculties, then we are igniting those internal powers that most people don't even recognize them as powers, as faculties. They're just part of life. And most people live out of their emotions. And
Mm.
so they're constantly reacting to circumstances. They're being influenced by the previous experiences, the culture, or the influence outside. So they take a past experience, bringing it into the present version of who they are to dictate a decision that is going to lead them to their next step. And so, how about changing the entire perspective, being conscious thinkers, right? Where you're saying, okay, what is it that I truly want? How do I feel about this? And it's about asking the questions, Julie,
Mhm.
because the only way for us to become aware of ourselves, to unfold the layers of ourselves, is by questions. And that's what we don't ask. We're constantly in such a speed of, I want this, and we're constantly reacting that we don't stop to even ask ourselves, what do I want? And so when I work with individuals, it's about creating a foundation and building a belt of tools that they can implement in anything. And why I say it's mindset work is because when you reprogram your mind, it falls and it ripples into every area of your life. It's not, let's just function and work on this. No, it's the core. Your core is your mind. And so, how do we reprogram it? Not because it's a bad program, but how can we elevate to your next version?
That is, yes, I love all that. Um, could you maybe share a success story that highlights the transformative power of your coaching, like someone that maybe you've worked with or, that you've helped to have a similar transformation like you, on par with that or even
Actually,
greater?
yeah, I do. And she's an incredible manifester, but she was actually my first client.
Really?
And she worked with me. Um, she's a beautiful human being, an attorney. She worked with me in the mediation business because I had
Oh,
different mediators
yeah.
that served the different areas. And she just has transformed her life. Like she's so disciplined in the things that, she's guided through and her belief in herself because of what she does, and the homework that she has. So she's literally has transformed. And you know what it was? It was so interesting because we're a mirror of each other,
Mhm.
right? We are all mirrors of each other. And what she was seeking is transition in her life from still being an attorney, but now elevating, finding a different way to be happy doing what she's passionate about, but not feeling drowned in the
Yeah.
process. And so, also being Colombian, Latin, understanding the culture and the limiting beliefs and so forth, it was a beautiful transition and independence that she created for herself. And till this day, I'm happy to say she's my friend, but she's my client and still work with her just to show like there is no ending. There's always evolution. New obstacles are going to show up. Um, what a beautiful thing to always have someone that believes in you more than you may believe in yourself. And I love that. Bob would always say that. Find someone that you're going to, that will share, you will adopt, their belief
Mhm.
until you're able to believe in yourself.
That's it.
And I think that that is the beauty and the essence of being a coach is
Yeah.
really integrating and spreading that belief of that individual to them.
Once you saw the change, like within yourself, that you've made this transformation, did you find it so much easier to see the like best in everybody? Like you're like you're right there. Like it's so easy to give people your belief to borrow because
Mhm.
you're just like open to a whole different
It's
vastness of human experience.
it is. And you know what? I say it's such a beautiful gift to be able to look at someone and just see their potential, you know, um, to hear them speak and know where they need the little adjustment and support. Um, and I've always, like, it's just so interesting because even when I was in mediation, I was always seeing the potential in colleagues in, opening up their businesses or, transitioning to something else. And it was easy to elevate them,
Hmm.
And again, these are the things that we take for granted that we don't recognize that it is
Right.
an ability and a skill that you have, right? It's a gift.
Hmm.
Most people go looking for their purpose thinking it's outside of them, when in actually you're born with the purpose. You have been practicing it, you have been living it. It's just that it's so easy that we don't acknowledge it as a gift. And so we take it for granted. And I didn't know that until later in my coaching that I realized people come to me always to talk about issues
Hmm.
since a young girl,
Right. Like this didn't
But,
happen like
and
last week. This has been going on for your life.
right.
Yeah.
So I just never saw it as that person, right?
Mhm.
So it's a beautiful experience, and especially to see the old version of them and the newer version of them, and it's like, wow, it's so fulfilling. And I think that is That is the biggest reward as a coach that we can receive.
And how about the comparison of the old version of you to where you are today and like your different milestones? What does that do to you?
Oh my gosh, Julie. It's it's so significant. The version of who I was, the temper I used to have, which I still say we have our tempers. They're just controlled. They're like, they're just, simmering, sleeping
Yeah.
because we're humans. And a
Hmm.
moment's gonna come where the fire is gonna come out,
Right.
and it's like you're gonna be like, oh my God, you're still there.
Yeah.
You will always be there. It's just how consciously aware and intentional are you? But for me, it was healing guilt,
Mhm.
independence, um, temper, expectations, right? Taking on other people's responsibilities, thinking they were mine.
Mhm.
There's been so much healing and release, and it's very liberating, very liberating.
Well, you
So
just have this like whole like calm persona, like even through a Zoom screen, right? I can feel you like energy coming off the screen where you're just like calm and like there you have this like definitive presence. It's like palpable, like you can see it on you. So
thank you.
that's somebody who knows themselves and is confident in their direction, and you're like solid with that. I can just see it. That's very cool. I
Thank
wanted to ask you just two more things. One is, do you have any upcoming projects or initiatives, anything that you're like excited about, or anything that you wanted to promote to the audience, things that you could help them with specifically, or
Absolutely. So I just launched a 90-day challenge, self-discipline challenge. So I used to have morning calls and study groups, and now I modified it to the next level. And so that is something that I do at in the mornings at 5:30 in the morning, Eastern time, and I do Pacific time. So it's beautiful because for me, th- I wouldn't be where I am if it wasn't what Bob Proctor taught me about reading and depositing something on a regular basis. To me, that's fundamental. There's so many techniques that you can learn, but none of those skills or techniques support anything or create a foundation unless you are continuously studying something and planting it in the garden of your mind. And so for me, part of my morning call is at least 15 minutes of reading and
Mhm.
and deep analyzing and creating the attitude and claiming the day that you want to have. So, and then I just launched two beginners and intermediate programs to either do as a group or one-on-one. So I'm super excited about that. I'm very happy about that. So yeah, I'm
Awesome. Where can people find you if they're in? Can they sign up with
yeah,
you? Awesome.
anytime. Yeah, absolutely. Instagram um,
Okay.
would be the easiest and what everybody goes to. Mindful with Karem on my Instagram or mindfulwithkarem.com website.
Wonderful. Wonderful. And then my final question for you is, do you have a go-to song, like something that just like either pumps you up or just keeps you focused on your purpose or
Um, so I don't have a go-to song, but I have a go-to oil, if
okay.
that makes sense. So I got into a habit of how to put myself present, anchored, and ready for anything through a little oil that I cultivate. And I put this before any call, before going into anything. It's more of like it's my way of just like centering and anchoring. So, and I give that to my clients and they love it. They're like, Karen, we need more. And I'm like, okay, okay. So that is something I use. And as far as music, I listen to a lot of music that just allows me to think deeper.
Mm.
You know, just instrumental. I
Yep.
love piano music.
Hmm.
So instrumental music, meditative music. Um, I'm a little nerd. I'm always listening to something. So
Me
if I'm
too.
driving, an audiobook.
Yeah.
If I'm, if I'm home, like downstairs, I have, spa music that is going on.
Right.
And in my office, I'll have YouTube and, background small music. Just there's always something just to have the frequency and the vibration going for me. So,
I love that you brought the oils in though, because people will talk the music and they'll talk about their vision boards and things like that. But the nose, the
and it's something and I tell everybody like choose something that you can always turn to and it your body memory, right?
hmm
The moment that the moment I go to get it and I just dab a little bit of it into my hand and rub it in, I set the intention, my body automatically, my mind, my body, my soul is in alignment and I'm anchored to wherever it is. It immediately stops all the doubt, fear, worry, disturbance. It's such a beautiful thing and we can do it with anything. I just you know, with this oil and putting little oils together created that, and it is my favorite thing to do. It travels with me, it goes everywhere with
I'm
me.
sure that's amazing. I think of it just like my favorite perfume, but they always keep discontinuing my favorite perfume, so I have to go to another one. But that's kind of like the sense that I get with
Hmm.
that when I hear it. And I have a very strong like memory of smell. Like I can remember like, oh, this took me back to here, or this smells like this. But when I get like that new smell or like a new perfume, and I'm like, this is it. This is the scent that's going to do that. But the oils, that's very smart.
Yeah,
I like
yeah.
that. Oh, that's
It,
awesome.
it just things that you adapt that work for you, and you got to
Hmm.
find what works for you.
Absolutely. I mean, there's so, like you said, there's so many different techniques and tools and this and that you can do, but at the end of the day, you do have to find something that you can work with and commit to
Abs-
and that feels aligned to
with you.
you
Absolutely.
as well. Karem, I'm so happy that you were able to join us today. This was so great. I just love speaking with you. And I know you're an incredible coach because I've watched you in action at Napoleon Hill Institute, and I'm sure that your private clients are like just loving you because you are truly phenomenal at what you do. And I'm, just honored that you came on here and spent some time with us, especially given you're so selective with who you spend your time with.
Well, it is my pleasure, Julie. Thank you for a wonderful time. I really had you had amazing questions, and I really enjoyed our conversation.
Thank
Thank
you,
you.
Karen.
Thank you.